ಅಲ್ವಾ? ಸೊ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಸ್ಕ್ರೀನ್ ಗೊತ್ತಾಗುತ್ತೆ. ನೀವು ಯಾರಾದ್ರೂ ಬಂದು ಹೇಳಿ, ದೆನ್ ಅದು 11:10ಗೆ ಒಂದು ಸೆಷನ್ ಮುಗಿಯುತ್ತೆ ಕಂಟಿನ್ಯೂಸ್ ಆಗಿ 2 hours. On the 5-10 minutes break, we will have it. 30 minutes break. Good. Okay. All right. Good morning to everybody.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Thank you very much for the.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Good morning. I think we are all facing a major challenge in this ongoing pandemic, and it is more easy for all of us to have a face-to-face interaction. But now, even with face-to-face interaction, the subject what I am discussing right now, for most of you might be a little bit more complicated. I wanted to make it very simple. But now the new challenge is discussing the entire issue online, because we are not seeing each other. And I feel like I'm just talking to the screen in front of the computer. It's going to be very difficult for me as well. So now you all are used to, especially from the Academic Staff Council, the lectures. And you know, like, I mean, if you do have any difficulties, you can unmute yourself and then you can ask questions, or we can have a interaction. I think that is much more easy, because we know that we are connected. And otherwise, I really don't know whether whatever I'm discussing right now is going to be communicated to all of you, whether it is in a good way or bad way. I just cannot tell. So I would like to have a very good interaction with all of you. If you do have any difficulties in any of these slides, you can just unmute yourself and you can ask the questions. Then we can have a dialogue rather than just a monologue from one side. And anyway, I am not a physical education. I think Madhyalagan has clearly said I am from the Department of Biochemistry. And but I do have a lot of interest in sports, and so the next department apart from mine, I'm very associated with the physical education department. I do know all the faculties, and I've also interacted with many of the faculties, and so that we can do what is known as an interdisciplinary research. So that is how I got associated with physical education department. Now the question is, once when I became the chairperson of PG Sports Council, so I just asked all my colleagues that, so I am from the Department of Biochemistry, and let me know how I can help the students. So during that particular time, and we also had the national sports, and at that time, doping became an issue. And many press people also came immediately, sir, there is a doping. And during that time, the newspaper covers, there is sample A. So now the sample A has been found positive. Now I think now they are waiting for the test result of a sample B. Now all the people will again came back to us and said, what is sample A and what is sample B, or what exactly is a doping? Then I discussed with all of them.
Sir, excuse me, 1 minute, sir, please, sir.
Good. Hello.
Hello.
Heli, please.
Sir, 1 ನಿಮಿಷ. Sir, H.G. Patil, sir. ದಯವಿಟ್ಟು ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ ಸರ್, ಪ್ಲೀಸ್. ವಾಯ್ಸ್ ಬ್ರೇಕ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ, ಕೇಳಿಸಲ್ಲ. ಯಾಗಿ ಒಬ್ಬ ಆನ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಆಡಿಯೋ ಅನ್ಮ್ಯೂಟ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಕೂಡ ಕೇಳಿಸಲ್ಲ ಲೆಕ್ಚರ್ ಸರ್ಗೆ. ದಯವಿಟ್ಟು ಮ್ಯೂಟ್ ಕೊಡಿ ಪ್ಲೀಸ್. ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು ಸರ್.
ಕಂಟಿನ್ಯೂ ಮಾಡಬಹುದಾ?
ಶೂರ್ ಸರ್.
ಮಾಡಿ ಸರ್.
ಪ್ಲೀಸ್ ಕಂಟಿನ್ಯೂ ಸರ್.
ಪ್ರೆಸ್ನವರು ನಮ್ಗೆ ಕೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರು, ಸ್ಯಾಂಪಲ್ ಎ ನಲ್ಲಿ ಪಾಸಿಟಿವ್ ಬಂದಿದೆ, ನಾವು ಸ್ಯಾಂಪಲ್ ಬಿ ಈಸ್ ಗೋಯಿಂಗ್ ಟು ಬಿ ಟೆಸ್ಟೆಡ್ ಅಂತ. ದೆನ್ ದಿ ಪ್ರೆಸ್ ಪೀಪಲ್ ವರ್ ಆಸ್ಕಿಂಗ್, ಏನು ಸ್ಯಾಂಪಲ್ ಎ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು, ಸ್ಯಾಂಪಲ್ ಬಿ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು, ವಾಟ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಕ್ಟ್ಲಿ ಇಸ್ ಎ ಡೋಪಿಂಗ್ ಅಂತ. ದೆನ್ ಐ ಟೋಲ್ಡ್ ದೆಮ್ ದಿಸ್ ಇಸ್ ಮೈ ಫೀಲ್ಡ್ ಆಫ್ ಏರಿಯಾ, ಬಟ್ ನನಗೆ ಆಫ್ ತಕ್ಷಣಕ್ಕೆ ಬರಲ್ಲ. I will definitely study and then I will get back to you. So that is the resultant of this drugs and doping in sports. Adanna ಒಂದು ರಿವ್ಯೂ ಆರ್ಟಿಕಲ್ ತರ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದೀವಿ. And that's how I like to interact with all of them in terms of how drugs are affecting the sports persons. So now today I'm just talking about the drugs and doping in sports. And nimge ella gottirutte, I think you are also participated in events, and you also see that yes, the doping is a big problem. It is even there in the college sports, but nobody is talking. And anyway, I think case by case, I think we will just discuss about what exactly is the doping and how doping is involved in sports. So now this is my topic, drugs and doping in sports. So I will go with my slides. Probably this is most of the pictures I got it from the Google of various events which happens in the Olympic. So now you have a track and you have most of the track events, and also in the fields. Now you can see, that's a very familiar picture for all of you. Now, in this regard, I think we are going to ask one question. I think I'm going to ask this question from the next slide. Now here, these are all the medal winners. And you, in the previous slide, I think you all have looked into that. I mean, what exactly is a right physical fitness? You all like to be like slim and how these people are trained. But now these are also the Olympic medals. Now on my left side, I think you do see a sumo wrestler. On the right hand side, you see a shot put person. So now there is a wrestler, cross country, long distance running, swimmer. Now we all have to ask which is the right physique. Whether the shot put person is the right physique, would you accept that? Or the lean person who is the swimmer? I know we have all that six pack and everything. So what is the right physique we want to have it, in fact? Because, so now this will also tell us for the next session, what I'm talking is about the genetic analysis in case of a talent identification. That is the other session which I'm going to talk. So now here, now these are all Olympic or I would say the national or international or the World Cup winners. Now we just have to ask which is the right physique you need, and what is the right acceptance of a physics. The most important one is that we have to find out what is a physique, or another one is what is health. These people are all healthy and they are all trained basically because they are all talented in a particular event and they are really good. So with that particular training, for example, if you just ask a shot put person to compete against a swimmer, for sure he cannot do that one because each one requires a different potency for their action. So now the question is, we will just ask what is a sports person and what is health and what exactly is the doping. So now we all know that we all have to be very healthy. Healthy means both physically as well as mentally. And sports activity definitely builds a character or builds a personality. You can always say that he's highly sportive person. And the main reason is that the sports person every day, I think he experiences both the joy of winning a game or winning an event, or also, for example, when there is an off day, when he got defeated, he will accept the defeat. Yes, you played very well. So these people definitely have the capacity to accept the defeat as well as the success. So in other words, they can face the challenges of a life easily. So now that we also have a new word coined, and we do find out in the dictionary that he is a very sportive person. So that's one of the reasons I think I like to be associated with most of the sporting activity, in fact. Now, why we have this doping is involved in many events is basically because psychologically as well as mentally, I think we are also preparing these athletes in a different way. For example, in case of a Olympic, earlier, the slogan for a Olympic is not to win, but to participate. So, for example, competing in Olympic, representing a country. That was a big thing now, in fact. But all of a sudden, over a period of time, now the psychological warfare started. Now the question is, they will try to initiate athletes, or they will incite athlete, stating that, see, in case of one of the Olympic slogan, winning silver means losing gold. So that was the slogan. So that means you have to compete very vigorously. It is not just mere participation. Now they say winning silver, that means you have lost gold. So you are not good enough. So this is the thought process which has been introduced into the athletics mind. Then in the coming Olympic, for example, we all know about the achievement of Michael Phelps, who is a great swimmer. So he has won 7 gold medals. Everybody knows that, yes, Michael Phelps has won gold medal. Now the question is asked, I mean, in analogy to the very first one, does anyone knows the silver medalist in each event? Probably nobody cares about like who is the silver medalist in all those things. In fact, let's say only his mom knows. So because of that, if you are competing for the gold. You remember that the very first one, not to win, but to participate, that was a very healthy atmosphere. But now as the event started progressing, now I think more and more people are started involving, and these are all the things. So now once you have all these kind of things, now then everybody is obsessed that I want to win. No matter what happens, we would like to win. So this is the attitude people have developed, and this must be one of the reasons for athletes involving in all kind of doping. I think this is a very famous Olympic event. This was in 1988 Seoul Olympic. That is the Benjamin Johnson. I think he has won the 100-meter sprint. All right. I think if you just look into most of the writings of that particular event, before he touches, I think he raised the finger that, okay, he has won. Otherwise, he would have even clocked a better timing. The second one happens to be the Carl Lewis. He came second. But 3 days later, it has been found out that he's been using and abusing substances that's called a steroid. So that is a performance enhancing drug. I will come to that particular part a little bit later. And his gold medal has been stripped. Earlier to that, this was in 1988. So in 1984, I think he has won 3 bronze medals in the same event. That is one in the relay as well as in the 100 meters. And in the 1988 Seoul Olympic, the Canadian government expected that he is going to bring us the gold medal in the track event. There was a lot of expectations. But immediately after 3 days, I think his gold medal has been stripped, and the Lewis has been given the first place. Now, this is one incident. Another one is that he is the Lance Armstrong. I think he is an American cyclist, in fact, because the cycling is going to be demanding a lot of endurance. Endurance ಬೇಕಾಗುತ್ತೆ. And the famous cycling event is going to be the Tour de France. Okay, now in the Tour de France, that is the biggest cycling event that demands a lot of endurance. This particular person has won that championship 7 times. All right. So usually what happens, like this particular guy, I mean, usually the cycling event is a team event. And a couple of his team event themselves started claiming that this guy is not winning in the right way because he is taking a lot of drugs, in fact. So now all these years, for the 7 consecutive years, when the issues of drugs being used by him is being discussed, he always said he's denied the whole process, in fact. Then what happens is, because of the type of drug what he has used, he developed a testicular cancer at the end of the day, in fact. Then in one of the talk show, he confessed that I think he's been using a testosterone, which is a steroid drug. And he used to take those particular drugs, and that has given him an edge over others in winning the world championship, especially the Tour de France, in fact. Now, the significant thing is that what I want to discuss, just because of the consecutive use of a testosterone in a higher level, so now he ended up in having what we call this as a testicular cancer. So we do have a world anti-doping agency. The major purpose is that it is not that I think you are going to win a medal. They are all concerned about the health of an athlete. Because if you do all kind of stuff and then you win a medal, in a couple of years, I think you just disappear because it's going to be very, very difficult in fact. So now the major concern is that whatever the athlete we are going to try, we want to be healthy and then we want to be competitive in a good way, in fact. So these are the two examples. I can quote several examples in this particular regard. So now just to know that one in a track event, which is a sprint, he uses a drug. And now this is another sport which requires endurance. In fact, I think he also used a drug which really helped in enhancing the substances. All right. So now these drugs, we call them or we categorize them as a performance enhancing substances so that an athlete can perform better over the other period. Now the question is, how serious is the problem? It's been discussed that, so the problem is very serious. But what is the remedy we are offering to that kind of a substances is very mere. It is just like putting a band-aid on a bullet wound, because that band-aid will not help to heal this particular bullet wound, in fact. Now the question is, why drugs or why doping? Now the question is, because most of the events, I think we are going to probably physical education, you people know more about that than me. It is going to be the bigger, we want to be the stronger, and we want to be the faster. So the another one is going to be the attitude of a sports person. It is an obsession towards success. You want to be a champion. Another one is going to be the, right now, I think we have professional sports in which most of the sponsors are going to come. We have a lot of franchises. One of the best example, I think India has got a lot of professional sports. I think you know about the cricket IPL. So I'm from the badminton. I like to do so that even badminton league, you have football, we have. So in other words, I think you have franchises, you play for a franchises, and then in case of a franchises, I think there are so many demands are going to be there. So now there is a big money, so you are obligated to perform well. So because of that, then you try to end up in taking some of these drugs. And partly even the sports organizers are responsible for all these activities. These are the main reasons why drugs and why doping is so severe in our sporting event, in fact. So now here we all have to teach the right values to an athlete. So now the question is belief in wrong values, intrusion of politics into sports, chauvinism, brutality, overworking, overtraining. All these things leads to the involvement of drugs for their management, in fact. Now, this is what I learned from all of you, that classification of a sports. So there are certain sports require stamina, endurance. Then it requires physical strength, that is the brutal strength. Another one requires concentration. When we do talk about the doping, so we don't have the same drug used in all events. So for example, stamina or an endurance sports, they do take a different type of a drug. In case of a physical strength, now they consume a totally different drug. And suppose in case of a concentration like archery and snooker or a pool, I think shooting. So now that requires a different training. And in each case, so we do have a number of banned substances in which for stamina, you take a different drug. For a physical strength, you take a different drug. In order to gain concentration, you do take a lot of different drugs, in fact. So we do have a whole lot of drugs. So I'm going to just bring you some of the concept that what type of drugs are going to be used in what type of sports, in fact. Apart from that, then we also have a lot of injury. So management of injury is another big challenge, in fact. So now, normally what happens is that, for example, in any European standard or a Western standard, if somebody has got an injury or if somebody has got a fracture, the doctors used to advise, look, we are not machines. We are human beings. So we all have a healing power. So now for healing to heal, so you have to give rest. You take rest, you have a healing, isn't it? But that is not the case in our case. No, sir, tomorrow is the big match. I want this guy to be ready by tomorrow. Sir, he said, my body is aching. All right, take whatever the drug is available. So as a result, so now, even though we can take rest and then we can heal ourselves so that we can be prepared well for the next. So it is not the situation like that, because somehow he is very important in a team event. We want him to be participated because either a school or a university or an institution want to have a medal. We don't want to lose. We will take him to that, see that I think he will be ready by tomorrow. That is not possible. Then again, in order to overcome such injuries, there are certain drugs which is again banned, but I think we are going to consume that, and then we are going to participate in most of the events, in fact. So now this is what is called as, when you do have a lot of pain, I think the pain reliever happens to be an anesthesia. All right. So now most of the anti-inflammatory drug is going to be given, or in the worst scenario, I think they are going to provide anesthesia. But these are all prescription drugs. You just cannot have it in the counter. But in India, it is an unfortunate thing that without any prescription, we are able to get any type of medication for ourselves. All right. So now, alternate to anesthesia or a pain reliever. So we do have all kinds of drugs. So now I have listed the banned substances. One is cocaine, opium, morphine, ganja. Now here, morphine is a drug which is used by doctors because this is the ultimate pain reliever. Probably you must be knowing that a terminally ill patient, for example, a cancer patient or a person with arthritis, in the end stages, in fact, they really suffer with pain. So for such people, morphine is given, but you cannot buy a morphine because it is a prescription drug. The drug, only the doctors can avail that particular one. And you do get what is known as a morphine patch. You can just have a band-aid like structure. It releases slowly into the system. That is one of the excellent pain reliever. I have seen a couple of cases in which my friends involved in cooking, so they got a boiling oil spilled over the skin. Can you imagine how painful it is, in fact? So when we took him to the emergency, they just give him a morphine shot. Within 15 minutes, he says, I'm not feeling any pain. Such is the wonderful drug. But the question is, you cannot use that drug uncontrollably, principally because all these drugs has got a process of what is known as an addiction, in fact. You feel you want more of those things, in fact. So in order to gain, you might hurt yourself in many processes. So because of that, because most of these things are called an addiction. So because of that, these drugs are banned, but still morphine is a wonderful pain reliever, and it is going to be used in a controlled way. But in India, I think people do have access to all these drugs, which is not really right. All right. So now the question is, once you do take some of these drugs, now the question is, during a game, are you able to think properly? If you do have any strategies, because these people, they just cannot think properly. They are in a state of an hallucination, in fact. Okay. Now, in that case, they are ready to take risk. So if they want to take risk, now so many unwanted events is going to happen. Many times they get really hurt very badly. Okay, so now suppose if you allow them to take risk, then all these things going to happen if you are under the influence of a drug. All right. So now I'm just going to the how these opium or how these drugs are came into use, in fact. So now I'm just giving you a little bit of an historical perspective about how these drugs are introduced into the sporting event, in fact. So in case of a Scandinavian mythology, athletes or even the soldiers, the combatants, were giving an extract of a mushroom. Okay, we don't know what is that mushroom contains. So now by consuming that kind of a mushroom, their physical power increases and they started becoming crazy and they were ready to take risks. For example, in case of a combatant, okay, you go forward and then I think we are going to follow that one. They are ready to take risks. Suppose if a normal thinking brain, he uses a different strategy because he want to safeguard himself and then he want to advance further. But here, this is not going to happen. So they identified that in case an athletes as well as several soldiers were given a mushroom extract. So they were feel highly energetic and they were ready to take risk and they really go crazy during that time. So we really do not know what exactly has happened in that particular mushroom. Now the question is in Germany, again, it is again a plant-based medicine. Workers were given certain roots as well as leaves. Now they work all day vigorously without any complaint. They don't say I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, I'm tired. No, they don't even claim any of those things in fact, because we don't know what is these extracts do contain. But they will not they will not even raise a single complaint. They show all the time happiness sign, and we really do not know why and everything. Probably they do have some kind of an alkaloids which are affecting their activities in fact. So now from these extracts, probably they have isolated, they have characterized what is an ingredient present, and they also started to identify and see what best can be done. So now then they have, now there is a famous drug, we call this as a speed drug. And it is called as an amphetamine. It is a stimulant. So these were extensively used. Where exactly the amphetamine is used? Not in sports, but in the soldiers. So because if you do take this particular speed, there is a lack of judgment and willing to take risk. All right. Now this was extensively used by the British Royal Air Force, and they have won several battles. So now all the time they say because of this amphetamine or because of this drug speed, so the Battle of Britain has been won by the Royal Air Force. But since these drugs have the lack of judgment and willing to take risk, ended up in losing a lot of their war planes, basically because they all ended up in having a crash landing because they lack judgment, they don't know when to land. So now then what happens, look, now there is a lot of risk involved in that. So we don't want to use this particular speed drug anymore. So they have banned that one. So now there is some amount of risk. Now suppose if this is banned, so now it can be used in another event. For example, this can be equally beneficial to a sports person. So that's how, whatever they were trying in case of a combatant, if those things doesn't really work or those things has got some adverse effects, then okay, we will try to use it in sports because it is less dangerous. But it really affected several persons' health in this regard. That's how the drug and the use principally for to stay in, to take risk, to go crazy. So some of these drugs are going to be that. So if these things has to happen, that means these chemicals has to act on our central nervous system, because that's where the brain really thinks or how we have to behave that one. So now the question is, apart from this history and the causes for this doping is going to be that partly organizers are responsible, sponsors are responsible, franchises, sports doctor, attitude. So all these things put together will be a very good combination to indulge in all kind of doping in fact. Now I think this is one of the earlier pictures, Battle of Marathon against Persians. I think you all know about that. The soldier Phidippides is the one. I think he ran the distance between Marathon to Athens. It is 42.195 kilometers, 26 miles, 385 dogs. It is just like from Mysore to continuously run to Mandya. And we all know that, I mean, how difficult it is. So the guy came and informed the people that, okay, we have won the battle. And because of the exhaustion, he just collapsed and he died. I think you all know about like how strenuous this marathon is going to be there, in fact. But now, in order to avoid all these strenuous, so in case of a long distance, I think we do have all kinds of drugs are going to be used. We will just see one by one, in fact. Now, I think these are all the complications in case of a marathon. So different countries, different cities organizes a marathon. Many cities will organize actual marathon of 42 kilometers. Some will have half marathon, some will have 5 kilometers run. So many things are going to be there. And they are all made to run on a very hard surface, and it takes a lot of the toil, and we do have a lot of injuries. Then how are you overcome all these injuries, in fact? Now, this is how the whole process started from the marathon, especially in Europe. So now they started, okay, we are going to have a 20-kilometer walk, 40-kilometer walk. So every year they started increasing the distance. So now the distance got into a lot of criticism when they say, okay, we are going to have an 830-kilometer walk or 520 miles. So now basically what happens, the organizers want to have a good coverage. So for a publicity, in fact. So now they can make this interview, they can discuss the whole issues and everything. That must be a very, very, very long distance. So now what happens, like a lot of criticism, especially from the journals, they came stating that this is not good for health, this is not good for the athletes, you have to stop organizing such event, in fact. So once they got a lot of criticism, now what happens, they have changed the walking event to a cycling event. So now during this 830-kilometer walk, you know how exhaustion it can be, how painful it can be. Now that's where, in order to win that case, when there is a resting period, so people started using opium. And the reason they started using opium, because the long distance walk is not going to be done continuously. It is going to be done weekly together. So they will rest, they will sleep, and then the next day, I think once they are again active, they started walking again. So now, for example, during the night time, you are going to sleep. Now the question is, if you want to cover good distance, so you don't want to sleep. So in that case, what happened? They started consuming opium. So now the opium, so that will keep them awake. Then again, they started walking. So that again amounts to a lot of exhaustions, in fact. So now against this, because since people started using this opium, then the critics and protests were organized to ban this particular one. So now what happens? Now that walk has been replaced by a bicycle. I think we all know about the story of a Tour de France. So now walking will cause a lot of exhaustion. So now this is the early version of a bicycle race. Now how the whole process is being evolved, that is the Tour de France. So now from walking, a long distance walking, now has turned out into the cycling process, in fact. Now the question is, now the organizers and as well as the franchises, again, they will start how to is there anybody is having a question? Okay.
Manohar sir, please mute.
Manohar sir, mute ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ. Start sir, please start.
Okay, all right. Now, once we do have the Tour de France, now the organizers want how to get more people to watch, how to make it more fun or interesting, or how to get a good coverage. Now they started introducing a lot of actions, the curves, then the accidents do takes place, then the photographer, they do get all kind of the coverages. Now this is a motorsport, because all these things will definitely injure a sport person. All right. So now, because the risk is always taken, because they are always under the influence of a drug, in fact. So many times these people were given Nitroglycerin, a drug used to increase the heartbeat. So because that will make them exhaustion, they ended up in hallucination. And in such sports, cocaine was extensively used in such races. When questioned, the response was, it is cocaine for you, but it is more like an anesthesia. It is a pain relieving, because when you are indulged in such a exhaustive sport, then you will be in a lot of pain. So now this is drug for you, but it is a pain reliever for you. So these are all the argument happened between the abusers and then the questions in facts. Now this is the line Armstrong, I think, winning the Tour de France. Now we are going to ask how the origin of whole doping started, in fact. So now I think this is the Tour de France. Now this is the final moment. So in the finishing stage, I think you always have a bunch of bikers pedaling it very, very powerfully, in fact. So now at this particular point, I think we are going to ask the questions in order to win this particular event. What exactly we need? Do we need a powerful bike with aerodynamics so that it can go very smoothly? A rich sponsorer will help to motivate the person to do that. A good road or a cheering people. But the most important, for example, if you ask a sports doctor or a biochemist, that requires related to the stamina or an endurance. With all these things, if the person require a very powerful hemoglobin containing oxygen so that he will metabolize strongly so that he can move that one. So now that's how. So the most important one for a biochemist, so in order to win such sports with endurance, it is going to be the red blood cells are very important. Red blood cells are the one which carry oxygen to the muscle. If the muscle requires a lot of strength, so in order to pedal in the final stages, so now at that time they require huge amount of oxygen during the sport. Now the question is, how do we supply oxygen in such an event? Now that's how the origin of blood doping started. So the blood doping started basically in a long distance event, and when it requires the final surge of an energy. So now we all know about how the whole important thing is going. So RBCs which carry oxygen to the muscle, and the bikers definitely need huge oxygen. Now how exactly the how to increase this red blood cells, in fact. Okay, earlier the so in the beginning, how the blood doping started is that in such an event, participants' own blood was removed and stored in a refrigerator. At the time of racing, it was again transferred back to the racer. So now, for example, during this particular time, so this was done only to, because these type of activities are advised by a doctor. So that now what they do that, okay, we draw a blood, probably about 5 days back, say around 300 ml of a blood, we store it. But suppose if the event is going to start today, in fact, okay, in the morning, I think we will transfuse this additional blood to him, in fact, so that he will have extra RBCs, so extra energy so that he can win. So if you want to do something like this, what happens, it requires a lot of tubing, because it is not a simple injection so that we can get it done in a locker room, in fact, because that requires a blood transfusion. You need a sachets, the tubings and everything. So when all these athletes, when they are in a particular place, many of these journalists, they started seeing a lot of these tubings, in fact, in and around. They are really questioned, what is this tubing? Why these tubings are going to be there? What exactly is happening, in fact? Now the question is, so in order to cover up the whole process, now they started using another drug, what is known as an erythropoietin. So erythropoietin is a hormone. Okay. So now this is a hormone responsible for the RBC formation, because RBCs are all going to be generated in the bone marrow. So in order to synthesize more number of an RBCs, the hormone which is required is an erythropoietin. So erythropoietin can be injected without much of a problem. You don't require a larger tubings or anything like that. So in the previous one, they used to transfuse the sports person's blood. But now, since there were a lot of questions arises at that time, in order to overcome that, then they started using a hormone which produces red blood cells. That hormone is called as an erythropoietin. So now erythropoietin is given in case of an anemic conditions, but not to a healthy person. Suppose because if the dosage is going to be complicated, in fact, suppose if you are going to produce more of an erythropoietin, if the person has got more of an red blood cells, even having higher amount of red blood cells is also not good, because it might end up in having a heart problem. In fact, people might collapse because of the malfunction of an heart. So you have to be extremely careful in administering erythropoietin, because now in a high sports, all these things are all standardized. I think meticulously they do perform all those things, but which is anyway, it is unethical. The world anti-doping agencies have blocked all those things in fact. So by definition of this blood doping and then the use of erythropoietin, so now it is going to be that the quest for better athletic through chemicals. What are those chemicals? They are called as the performance enhancing drugs. All right. So now, if you want to have the bigger, stronger, faster, and also the sporting event which requires concentration. Now, these are all the various types of drugs which are used. All right. I'm just giving you some of those things. Most of them are hormones. Okay, in order to define what are hormones, I think I will take a minute to explain that. But currently, growth hormones are used, which is not, if it is not used properly, I think you will get a lot of complications. Many of the anabolic and androgenic steroids. Anabolic steroids is the one which synthesizes the muscle. Androgenic is the one which synthesizes the male character. Anti-inflammatory steroids are again, because when you do have a lot of pain, lot of injuries, in fact, you're going to consume. Now you are going to, for example, if you want to have a high jump or if you want to have a 100-meter dash, so you need to have a lot of stimulants which will affect the central nervous system. And in case of the event which requires a lot of concentration, I think we are going to have what is known as a beta blockers, in fact. Okay. All these things are all useful if it is used properly, but in a clinical conditions. But not to a healthy person, not to get advantage in case of sports.
Ide kana sonnet idu. Kia sonnet anbuttu. Basic 8 hour. 8 hour ena. 7 hour. ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ಹೇಳಿದೆ ಬಿಡು. ಮತ್ತೆ ಗಾಡಿ
ಸರ್ ಯಾರೋ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ.
ಕಾಂತರಾಜು ಮ್ಯೂಟ್ ಮಾಡಿ.
ಇದು ಕಣ ಉಂಡೆ ಸಿಸ್ಟರ್ ಆಯ್ತು.
ಕಾಂತರಾಜು ಅವರೇ
ಉಂಡೆ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಎಲ್ಲಿ?
ಕಾಂತರಾಜು ಅವರೇ.
ಕಾಂತರಾಜು ಅವರೇ ಕಾರ್ಯಪರ ಮತ್ತೆ ಮಾಡಿ. ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ನೋಡಿ ಈಗ.
ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಇಷ್ಟು ಹೇಳ್ಕೊಡೋದು ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಹೇಳ್ಕೊಡಲ್ಲ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ. ಗಾಡಿ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗದೆ ಇದಾಗದೆ ಅಷ್ಟೇ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. ಅಷ್ಟೇ ಹೇಳ್ಕೊಡೋದು ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ. ಅವರು ಅದೇ ಹೇಳ್ಕೊಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಅಲ್ಲ ಅದು ಪರ್ಫಾರ್ಮೆನ್ಸ್ ಅವೆಲ್ಲ ಹೇಳ್ಕೊಡ್ತೀವಲ್ಲ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ. ಅವ್ರು ಕೇಳ ಯಾರ್ಗಾರ.
ಯಾವಾಗ ಬುಕ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀರಿ ಯಾರ ಹೆಸರು ಬರೆಯೋಣ ಮುಗೀತು.
ಕಾಂತರಾಜು ಅವರೇ
All right.
Sir.
Okay, mute ಮಾಡಿದಾರಲ್ವಾ?
Yes sir, yes sir. Yes sir.
So now, during our discussions, I think you are using a term called hormones. All right. So hormone, we will try to understand chemically what they are and how we are going to administer. Hormones, chemically, either it can be protein-like substances or it can be like steroids. All right. Now, I will just give an example, because any disease associated with hormones are very difficult to treat. Okay, one of the disease which is tightly regulated is going to be the diabetes. I think nimgella gotirutte diabetes andre enu. One fellow or the other person, either you know a family member or you do know a friend who is suffering from diabetes. Okay, now in that particular case, any hormone disorder, suppose if the hormone level increases, you have a complication. If the hormone level decreases, you have a complication. So you have to have a right balance. So ನೀವು ಹಾರ್ಮೋನ್ಸ್ ನ ಜಾಸ್ತಿನೂ ತಗೊಳಕ್ ಆಗೋದಿಲ್ಲ, ಹಾರ್ಮೋನ್ಸ್ ನ ಕಡಿಮೆನೂ ನೀವು ತಗೊಳ್ಳೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಆಗೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ವೆರಿ ಇಂಪಾರ್ಟೆಂಟ್. ಸೊ ಇವಾಗ ಇನ್ಸುಲಿನ್ ಇದೆಯಲ್ಲ, ದಿಸ್ ಪರ್ಟಿಕ್ಯುಲರ್ ಒನ್ you cannot take it as a tablet. You have to take it in the form of a injection. I think you all know about it. In fact, insulin, since it is a protein in nature, so you cannot take it orally, because if you do take orally, so this is going to be digested like any other protein. On the other hand, the insulin has to be administered through intramuscular. It has to be taken through that. Now we also have testosterone. So in case of a testosterone, it is easily absorbed through the intestine. So we don't have to take this testosterone through injection. It can be taken orally. So we do have hormones which can be consumed orally, but we also have hormones which are consumed, which are administered through injection, in fact. So these two things are very important. I will give you one more example where, apart from diabetes, many family members or the friends circle, I think you know, there is also what is known as a thyroid problem. So now the thyroid problem is like, you get hypothyroid if the function is very low. If they are very aggressive, it is a hyperthyroid. Now for that, they do take a lot of medications. Those medications are consumed orally. It is not taken like insulin. Okay, so now hormones, I want to just clarify that to all of you, that two kinds of hormones. One hormone has to be administered through intravenous or through intramuscular, and some other hormones we can take orally. All right, suppose if I do say any hormone which is a protein hormone, so that means all those protein hormones has to be taken through intravenous or intramuscular administration. So now the question is, when you talk about the anabolism and the catabolism, anabolism is the synthesis. Most of the steroids, what we consume, enhances anabolism and decreases catabolism, so that muscle will be built up, so that you have a strong muscle. So all other characters, I think you are going to achieve by this one. All right. Now, what is the advantage of it, in fact? So now the question is, this is growth hormone. I think, for example, in a sporting event, especially the basketball, a taller will have an advantage. I'm not going to say that they are going to be the best, in fact, but how are you going to make taller? So now the question is, so administration of growth hormone is something which is used in case of a sport, in fact. So now I'm going to discuss about some of the adverse effect of a growth hormone. Suppose physiologically, if the growth hormone increases, not because of the administration for the sport person, in a general scenario, if the growth hormone increases, then what happens, in fact? Okay, so now this is the use of steroids. I will not get into that one. So now the question is that the progress of doping is, the medicine identifies the molecular basis for health and disease. It presents athletes with new ways to improve their performance, some legal, some not. Most popular new compounds are identical to natural chemicals made by the body, making sure detection is difficult to possible. So now, since we do have the anti-doping agencies which they are going to detect in the urine sample, so we also try to mask so that I think they are not able to detect some of these things, in fact. So that is also illegal. I think we will discuss that a little bit later, in fact. So now I'll come into the growth hormones. So because of a normal scenario, growth hormone, if there is an excess, get lead to two complications. One process is what is known as a gigantism. Another one is going to be the acromegaly. We will see what exactly is a gigantism. We all know that the child till adolescent, so they grow, and especially during the school days and either in the high school, their growth is very, very high, in fact. And that is quite a natural phenomenon. So after adolescence, then the further growth ceases completely. So now this is an average weight and the age, and we can also measure the growth hormone. During this period, suppose because of an abnormality, if there is an excess of growth hormone during this period, so during the growing period, so we are going to have a natural increase in growth hormone. At this particular time, if there is an excess growth hormone, then the child will become gigantic personality. What we call this as a gigantism. Now, this is a few examples. So during their childhood, their growth hormone increases excessively. They ended up in having what is known as a gigantic personalities. So normally during their child, we should not advocate, okay, nan magalu kulgidale kulgidane anta anbut navenadru growth hormone kodak shuru ಮಾಡ್ತು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ, then they are going to have a lot more adverse effect, in fact, which is not right also. Now the next one is called as an acromegaly. So you during this acromegaly, what happens? For example, here everything is normal, the growth ceases, in fact. Once the growth ceases, after that there won't be any increase in growth hormone, so they are going to be normal. So after adolescent, if there is by abnormal conditions, if the hormone increases, so then we are going to have a condition what is known as an acromegaly. So this is a classical picture of an acromegaly. Now, how this particular person with a moon face, now because of the acromegaly, you can see that
Mulia, 11:16.
Can I continue?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now, in case of an acromegaly, so usually the increase in what do you call hormones happens after adolescent. So now this is a normal person with a moon face. So no, during this particular time, in case of an acromegaly, the face, the whole thing will started enlarging, in fact. Now you can see that the round face is become an elongated. Now this is a sideway picture in which you can make out that I think he is going to be like his face is going to be elongated. Suppose if you try to take an X-ray of their legs and then the hands, in fact, you can see that most of them is going to be very, very long. Okay. Now this condition is going to be what is known as an acromegaly. Okay. So this is, you have to find out that I think in these patients, I think there is an abnormal increase in the growth hormone. So they are going to do some surgical procedure to minimize the whole process. Now, this is an example of Michael Phelps. I think we all know that I think he has won 7 gold medals. So now you can see his face resembles like that of a acromegaly. Now the question is the debate is that whether Michael Phelps has been given growth hormone. Because for swimming, this type of hand with longer limbs are very important. So now many people also question Michael Phelps, or even several articles came in the sports magazine stating that if you just look into the face of Michael Phelps, So he resembles like that of an acromegaly case, in which it is because of the increased growth hormone, in fact. And but anyway, I think we don't know whether he has used, or the people might have used growth hormone just enough so that it cannot be detected by the anti-doping agencies. I mean, all those theories have come forward. Now, I'm just leave it to the sports experts to take a decision. I mean, how these hormones are used in influencing a sporting event, in fact. So now this is one use of a growth hormone. So now that growth hormone again is a protein. So it is just like an erythropoietin, where we also use to increase the RBC cells, in fact. So growth, like erythropoietin, growth hormone also has to be taken intramuscular through injection only, in fact. We cannot consume orally. Now we are going to use some steroids. So we are going to have two kinds of steroids: anabolic steroids that increases the synthesis of most of our biomolecules. Another one is going to be the androgenic steroids, which gives the male character. So for example, for a female athlete, if you try to give androgenic steroids, I think they will become bulky, they will become more athletic in nature. So this is the same thing, what I've explained, I have given in the form of a slide. It helps the synthesis of especially the muscle cell anabolic steroids, and it blocks catabolism. So it stops the degradation of the muscle cell. And in case of there is a rigorous training, so it also helps in the recovery, in fact. So now you know how steroids are very, very important. Now, when it comes to the androgenic steroids, basically these androgenic steroids are given to the female athletes. Again, it helps to synthesis muscle cell. Again, it blocks catabolism, and it helps develop, the secondary sexual character. I can give you a few examples how the Germans have trained their female athletes by giving testosterone, and they were all looking like a male rather than a females. So now, probably I think we also got into a lot of this gym culture. And even in case of a gym culture, everybody wants to have a strong muscle, strong build-up. And probably many of those gym instructors will also say that, please take this health drink. So when they say health drink, we don't know what it contains. Probably they might contain all these abusive drugs. So we have to be extra careful, especially people who go to the gym. If they do advocate any health drink, please use it carefully. So better to have.
Excuse me, sir.
Really, sir.
Now break time, sir. 11:15 to 11:45.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Yes, sir.
On the 5-10 minutes break, now.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
that is good. You
Yes,
you have to tell me, otherwise I won't know.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Okay.
Thank
So
you, sir.
now myself.
45, sir. Break is 15 to 40.
Okay, I will come back in 5-10 minutes.
No, sir. Sir, 11 into 11:45, sir. Break is
11:45, sir.
Now, it doesn't really matter what is the break. If the participants wants to take a break, we will take a break, because
Yes,
there is
sir.
no point in pushing the whole case. Okay, I will come
Yes,
back
sir.
in 5-10 minutes. Then we will continue. Is that okay?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you.